Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, welcome to week 29, I think is what we're at, and we have another weekly wrap up for you. And yeah, I'm pretty excited. We got through some amazing books. I reread a couple amazing books, and it's gonna be a good time today. So we'll just get right into it. I don't actually have any announcements up front or any of that. Of course, remember to check out my Etsy shop. I do have a sale going on there right now. And otherwise, I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and dive into these because we got a lot to talk about. So the first book that I finished was The Best of All by Karla Sorensen. This is book 2 in her The Best of Men series, I believe is what it's called. Yeah. And this series is actually following a group of people who are kind of in, how do I describe this? It's so weird because it's, okay, so what has happened is there's this couple who's died and they had a little girl, and the hero was a football player. I can't remember not the hero, the man who died, sorry. The hero of this book is a football player, but we'll get to it. So this couple had died. The first book was about the home that they left to one of their friends, and he was renovating it so that he could sell it and leave the money to the daughter, okay? But someone else was the guardian to the little girl. He got the house, someone else got the little girl, right? So this book is about the two people who are now co-guardians of their little girl, okay? So still same scenario, still very sad, of course. And there's these two friends who she was, the heroine's name is Zoe, and she was best friends with the woman. And Liam was teammates and best friends with the man who died. And so when they died, they are the godparent, and they're the godparents of this little girl. And Zoe and Liam get made the guardian of this little girl. And Liam just, in the beginning, is very much like, why would he make me the guardian? I'm horrible with kids. I've never, I thought I would just be in name only, and I would buy her nice gifts every year for her birthday and not have to do anything about it. And instead, this little, I think she's only 3 years old, is now an orphan, and they're who are there to take care of her. So it's a pretty rough beginning, and Liam, he really doesn't act right in the beginning. And poor Zoe, she's made a full-time caregiver of this little girl, and it is so overwhelming. And so my heart couldn't help but go out to Zoe, of course, right away, where I was just like, oh my God, what would I do if this happened to me? Like, what would I do? It would be horrible. And it is a slow burn relationship between the two of them. So I enjoyed this. There were some good moments of it, of course. I mean, I loved watching Liam slowly fall for this little girl, slowly step up into his role. I listened to this one. I did have an e-arc, but I also got an ALC from NetGalley for this one. And the narrators were Shane East and Samantha Bentmore. And so it was very interesting because this was American football. But Shane East, and not only is he a British voice, but he's a British man in the book, he's playing American football. And I thought that was very interesting. His story about how he comes to be an American football star was kind of cool. But yeah, he's very stubborn, very grumpy. So there's a lot I think people will like about him. As I'm coming to find with Karla Sorensen, though, I mean, this book was almost closed door. Okay, this was almost a, closed door romance. And it's not that I have a problem with that. I mean, you guys know, but I'm a person that I'm like, just call it that. Because there was one scene at 95%. There was an open door scene at 95% of this book. Literally in the last chapter, before the epilogue, is when they finally consummate their relationship. And it's one of those where if you're not told a book is closed door, I talk about this all the time. I don't have a problem with low spice these days. I think it's great. It's fresh to mix it up. It's refreshing to see how an author can keep me engaged in a story without there being spicy times, because it does happen, you know. I like erotic romance, but I can read closed-door romance. I just don't like being bamboozled. I don't like an author who previously will, you know, include those things to change it up and not tell us. I just don't like that. I don't appreciate it, because it just sets your book up for bad expectations, because all that sexual tension that's building between the two of them, and there's some great tension, you just keep waiting for it to be consummated, and then I'm getting closer and closer to the end of the book and nothing's happening. And then I'm like, oh, well, maybe this just is a closed door, and I'm coming to that. And then no, in the last 10 pages of the book, the dick comes out and we do it. And I'm just like, I don't know. Anyway, that's a personal pet peeve. It probably won't be a pet peeve for a lot of other people, but I pass that on to you guys because some of you it will irritate you, or you'll hear about it, you love Carla Sorensen, and now you're prepared to go into it, because there's a lot of good stuff, but it just ended up falling a little flat for me at the end. So I gave this one 3.5 stars, and it was a 1.5 on the spice scale. And of course, there are trigger warnings for death of loved ones and grief are there. All right, next up, I read Wildest Dreams by Kristen Proby. This one is now out as well, but this was a new release, and this one is book number 3. Why did I write book number 1? This is book number 3 in the Wilds of Montana series. I listened to an ALC of this one, as well as I had an e-arc of this one as well, and this one was narrated by Jason Clark and Maxine Mitchell. Done very well. It's a great pairing. I love their narrations. And this one is Ryan Wild, who's actually the Billionaire brother. He had left town, become very successful businessman, and I believe it was at the end of book 1. It was either the end of book 1 or the beginning of book 2. He's moved back to the small town there, and he's started up a ranch, and he wants to be close to his family again. Now, there's some animosity between him and Remy, mostly Remy having this animosity because he feels like Ryan abandoned him around the time that his wife died. And I mean, he did, but I don't know, I forgive him, at least after the end of this book. I forgive him, right? But Ryan in book 2 actually adopted a teenager. So there was this troubled kid in town named Jake who was actually orphaned earlier on in his life. I think, did it happen in like the beginning of the series or not? I actually don't remember when it happened in there. But yeah, he was orphaned and he's in foster care. And in book 2, for sure, when Chase is, because Chase is a cop in this town, he kind of rescues Jake from his foster situation. Jake had also done some petty thieving and gotten himself into some trouble, and so he gets placed with Ryan to kind of work on his ranch and help out there, and Jake ends up loving it there. He loves the horses. Him and Ryan get along so well that in book 2, as I said, Ryan has adopted him, and I love that so much. I love when a man becomes a dad and he doesn't have to be. So I was already really set up well. So then what the romance is in this one is there's Poppy, who she's good friends with both Millie, who is Ryan's sister, as well as some of the other ladies in the series already, of course. You know, they're all friends. Poppy owns a little boutique and clothing store, and she also is Ryan's best friend's sister too. So, you know, there's all those connections because it's small town or whatever. But what happened at the end of book 2 is at the wedding of, I believe it was Remy and what's her name's wedding. Sorry that I can't remember it. Ryan and Poppy actually have a one-night stand. And so in this book, at the beginning, of course, we're seeing that happen. And then we see how they have a bit of a, I wouldn't even call it a miscommunication. I'd call it like a non-communication, but not in a way that's frustrating. I know that's weird, but it honestly was really like, duh, because she didn't leave him her number and he didn't, you know, and he didn't know she wanted him to contact her because she didn't leave her number behind. And she's been waiting for him to reach out to her and he didn't. So she's like, okay, I guess it was just a hookup. So they both are kind of under the misconception that the other one isn't interested in anymore. But that quickly gets dispelled. And this romance is mostly Ryan just absolutely spoiling this woman. We see him being a dad. We see him working on relationships with his family. This was just very sweet. There is a suspense element that doesn't have to do really with like either of them. I could have lived or died without it. Like it would have been just fine. But I really enjoyed this one. And I think I tie it with the first one for me. So I gave this one 5 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale, because Ryan, y'all, whew, he is a hot one for sure. All right, then I had another arc, of course, you know. I had so many this week, guys. There were so many. I didn't even get to all of them. There were so many. I read If You Give a Billionaire a Bride by Ann Einerson, which was one of my anticipated reads of this month. I was so excited. I've been loving Ann's small town romance, but I will say, for this being an Aspen Grove novel, we don't spend a ton of time in the small town. You know, we have these 2 people from the same town, but they spend most of their time in London, and they actually begin the story in Vegas, because this one is a Getting Married in Vegas book, which is of 2 new releases last week that were married in Vegas, so we'll get to that. But they are childhood friends, and they actually made a marriage pact when they were 18 with each other, which Everly has decided to forget, but Cash definitely remembers it. And now I believe they're both like 30 or early 30s, and they both are in Vegas. And they don't know it, but they're kind of there for the same business reason without knowing it, because Cash's family is actually going to be buying out or merging with Everly's family company. And she doesn't know this because her father's a prick and didn't tell her why she was in Vegas. It's weird. So anyway, they end up meeting at a hotel bar, which I do have to say is quite the coincidence. If you've ever been to Vegas, okay, I've only been there one time. I was there for a work event myself. For you to stumble into the same bar in Vegas and know each other there, that is quite the coincidence for that to happen. But they end up talking and drinking, catching up. They actually haven't seen each other in quite a few years, even though they both work for their family companies in London, but they haven't run into each other in a while. And they end up having some drinks, and one thing leads to another, and they end up married in Vegas, okay? And when they are going to get an annulment the next day, which Cash doesn't want to get. He doesn't want to get one because he has wanted to call in that marriage pact for quite a while. But Everly's like, no, we're not going to stay married because of this. Like, we need to get an annulment, not happening. Well, when they tell their families like, well, you guys, the merger's happening and it will look really bad and it could do the company harm if it's seen that you guys are getting an annulment when we're merging our companies. So they kind of get pushed in to remaining married until this business is going to be concluded, and that includes them moving in together, and, you know, we go from there with a Cash, I want to keep saying Chase because I just read the other book that had a Chase in it. Cash is going to do everything he can to make sure she doesn't want to leave him at the end of that time. So he's going to do his darndest to make it happen. So we'll see how it goes for him. So yeah, this one was really great. There was a lot of sweet moments. Again, there was a lot of spoiling going on. There was also a lot of him being very like my wife about everything. And it was just really, it was really cute. As she does. And there wasn't anything that I had to complain about. So this was another 5-star, and I gave it 3.5 on the spice scale. Okay, next up, I finished my reread of A Heart of Blood and Ashes. I was actually annotating this for one of my annotated pre-orders, and I need to get the notes transferred over now, but I hadn't read A Heart of Blood and Ashes in about 2 years, and there has been, in case you don't know, there's a couple things I have to share. Number one, a lot of people don't know that there's more than one book in this series. I had multiple people, because I was saying, I'm getting prepared for the next book, and people didn't know that there was more. So right now, currently, there are 3 books in this series. There's 2 main books and there's 1 novella. So yeah, there's A Heart of Blood and Ashes, A Touch of Stone and Snow, and The Beast of Bentmore. Those are all available. So definitely read those. Now, it has been pushed back again and again and again for us to get book 3. The author, there was COVID stuff happening, of course, which is the case. I mean, that's been a long time now. We know we're quite a few years out of that. But the author had health problems, and then she had to move, and then she didn't like where the book was sitting, so she started over. So yes, it has been a long, frustrated road for us. And she hasn't really shared any updates. Like, the publishers have kept moving the publishing date all around because they're allowed to do whatever the fuck they want with that. But she finally did an update in her Facebook group that said things are back on track. She's already finished her rewrite of the first half. She's working through the second half, and she hopes to have it out soon. So who's to say what that soon will be? But it definitely is a lot sooner than the last 4 years that we've been waiting, right? But if you don't know, this is one of my favorite books from the year 2020, and this is about Maddox, who is basically kind of like a warlord type of guy. And at the beginning of this, he does these raiding things. There's some barbarian stuff vibes going on, but there is also magic in this world. There is also like dinosaur beasts, and there are these revenants that basically turn people into like zombies. So there's some fantastical elements to this too. It's definitely a fantasy romance, which is cool. But at the beginning of this, Maddox discovers that his mother and father were lured away to another kingdom and they died there. He doesn't know the full extent of anything, but he rushes home from his raids with his group of warriors to discover what's going on. And he learns that he's not allowed to seek revenge because apparently it's his parents' fault that they died. That they did something to aggravate this other king, and so their deaths were justified. And he's not allowed to seek revenge, or it will cause political ripples or whatever. And Maddox is like, fuck that, I'm gonna find a way to get revenge. Well, he also learns he's not allowed to strike back at the king and his son, but he learns from a little birdie who comes to tell him that the king actually has a daughter that no one knows about. And the daughter he could strike back at. So Maddox like, cool, and takes his men and begins to chase down this woman who we learn is being transferred by one of her brothers to a man that she's going to marry for a marriage alliance. And when they track down this caravan, this woman, we learn her name is Yvonne, and her brother is absolutely vile. And he's like, your parents deserve this. He starts saying all these nasty things about Maddox's mom and how she was like, deserved everything that happened to her and blah, blah, blah. And then we see Yvonne, and Yvonne is actually crippled and small and sickly and weak. She has been, I mean, we'll learn this throughout it, but I'm just telling you now, like when Maddox sees her, he sees this ugly, like crippled woman. And there are reasons why she looks like that, but most of it is quickly like shook when she actually murders her brother, who, remember, Maddox is not allowed to kill. He's there to kill her for revenge. But Yvonne kills her brother and says, there's your revenge. I actually think that you shouldn't kill me. I think you should marry me because that's the only way you can become king of my people is by marrying me. That's why my father wants to use me, because the line actually passes through the matriarchal line, not the patriarchal line. And that's the other reason why her father has kept her locked up, because she's the one who really would be the queen, right? This is very confusing, I know. There's a lot in this book. I've read this book like 4 times, I think now, and there's still parts of it that are like a lot. But it's such a rich story. It's amazing. Because we have Yvonne, who is, again, crippled, weak. She's missing 2 fingers on one of her hands. She's sallow. It's very clear she hasn't seen the sun ever, and she's very weak. And Maddox is like, you're supposed to be a warrior queen, and he's very cruel to her because, again, thinks this is an enemy. And he was planning to murder this woman until 2.5 seconds ago when she stabbed her brother. She still has her brother's blood all over her when she says, I will be your queen. I will make you a king. You know, there's just a lot of back and forth. And it culminates in her actually jacking him off with her bound hands with her brother's blood all over them to prove that she'll do anything he asks. And we get introduced to my favorite female in fiction. And every time I read this, I'm reminded, I think maybe someone will have passed her. I think maybe it will have changed up. But y'all, when you read the full journey of Yvonne in this book, and you see this woman who starts out as the most physically weak person in the story, but everything in here is what gets her where she's going. Her belief, her faith, her inner strength cannot be outdone by her outer strength at all. It's amazing. And Maddox, for all of his physical strength, there are a lot of things that he doesn't understand about what's going on. And if she can temper his rage and get him to listen to her, they could be the greatest couple that's ever been. And so there's just, this is quite the journey, okay? Maddox fucks up so many times, you're ready to punch his face in, okay? But something this time around, because I know how much I love Maddox by the end, like I know that, but this time around I wanted to see why I'm so willing to still love him at the end. And it's because in the first few chapters, before he really fucks up, right, and we get mad at him, we see how deeply he cares about his parents and his people. And you see how much he cares about them. And so you know how devastating it is that his parents are dead. And the person he blames for it is Yvonne. And you'll see why he specifically blames her, but he blames her for this. And so for her to say, not only like, let me live, but marry me and let me have your children, that is a big ask of this man. It is a big ask. And we don't know anything about Yvonne yet. We don't get her point of view until Maddox sees her. So you understand why he's untrustworthy. But quickly as you get to know Yvonne, you realize how much he's fucked up and how much he needs to give her a chance. But it's so good, you guys. This is one of my favorite books of all time. So good. And yeah, Yvonne is probably my favorite heroine like ever I've ever read, okay? That is, I don't say that lightly, okay? She's up against some real hard bitches out there, okay? But I love her. All right, moving along. We have our second Married in Vegas novel. We have Play Along by Liz Tom 40. Yes, it is Tom 40, as in the number 40, okay? That's how you say it. I was corrected by a PR company who they told me how we say it. And by other people who've watched as well. I have been corrected through the years. Yes, you know who you are. Yes. Now I'm saying it right. We can only go forward with saying it right now. So anyway, this is book 4 in the Windy City series, you know, which has lauded such wonderful books before as The Right Move and Mile High. Wonderful stories. And this one is about Isaiah, who is Kai's brother from the first one, and Kennedy, who in the beginning of the story where we have a flashback, she wants to become a doctor for the Windy City Warriors. That is the job that she comes to apply for. And when she meets the very sexist head doctor of the team, he doesn't want to hire her. He doesn't want to hire a woman. He says women are too much trouble in this role, dealing with men all the time, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, dude, I moved here for this job. You promised me this job. It's not my fault that you didn't do your research, like whatever. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm not giving it to you. And so she ends up accepting the job as a like physical therapist for the team because she's already moved there. She doesn't want to deal with, you know, trying to find a job somewhere else. And honestly, it would be too embarrassing to her to tell her family that she didn't get this job. So she ends up taking it. She also has a fiance in the beginning, which we learn pretty soon, like that was actually an arranged marriage that she was going to be entering because she's actually from a very wealthy family. And her being a doctor really went against everything that they like wanted her to be. But anyway, Isaiah meets her on her first day of this job, and they actually have this great moment together in the women's bathroom there, which is kind of funny because, yeah, in the staff quarters, she becomes the only woman. So she gets like the women's bathroom to herself, which is funny. So it becomes a meeting place for them throughout, which I think is kind of cool. But anyway, then we skip ahead to current time, which is 3 years past that. And Isaiah is discovering that that she's actually not like engaged anymore. And he has been flirting with her and macking it up to her for years, literally. And now he finds out she's free and he just almost can't handle it. He just almost can't handle it. But he's really been just totally over the top trying to win her all this time. So they end up being in Vegas she's there for a bachelorette weekend, which, get this, is for her stepsister, who is now engaged and will be marrying who she was engaged to. So yeah, that's great to have to go to that engagement party. And then Isaiah and his boys are there. And so she ends up running into him and they end up talking, and she's a little tipsy, so she is much more open about what's happening in her life than she would normally be. And this, that, and the other. And Isaiah says, you know what the best revenge will be? If you married somebody else. And so what do? They end up getting married. Okay, they end up getting married in Vegas, right? And so when they get home, she's like, oh my God, we have to get an annulment. We can't do this. Again, same situation we usually see when it's a married in Vegas. But before they get the chance to do any of that, they get called into the owner's office. And the owner is this sweet elderly man there who is like, if you guys are, if you guys get broken up, that'll make things really awkward here. And that means that we will have to lose, Kennedy, because she's the one who has to go. And Isaiah is like, no, we're not doing that. We're actually married, because he thinks they're just dating. There is paparazzi photos of them in Vegas, whatever. And Isaiah's like, no, we're married. Like, you can't discriminate against her. There's other married couples that have been here. Like, what are you doing? And so to keep her job, they stay married, because if she breaks up with him or annuls him, she's going to lose her job, apparently. Very sexist around here, okay? Very, we'll get into it. Not the smartest thing. And she actually is trying to get a job as a team doctor in San Francisco. And so if she is able to keep her job here for the next couple of months, then she'll be able to leave and go, and they'll get an annulment or get a divorce. They're going to get a divorce, not an annulment. They could do that. But they basically have to stay fake married because he made it so until she leaves. Otherwise, she'll lose her job. So those are all the hoops and loops that we're jumping through for this story. Now, how did I actually feel about it? I did think it was a very complex setup. I was kind of annoyed with Kennedy in the beginning because she didn't tell anyone else what this lead doctor was making her do. Like, she literally has an MD. She's a doctor. Why is she accepting the role as a PT? And now 3 years later, when she's trying to get a, team doctor's job, which I'll just tell you, she's trying to get a head doctor's job at another team. What is her experience? It's showing that she was a physical therapist for 3 years, not using her doctor role. Like, I don't know how that would look on your experience, that sure, you have an MD, but you haven't been using it for 3 years. You've been a physical therapist. Like, why did she just accept that, But none of that's really by accident, because as you read through this story, you see the life that Kennedy's had. And yes, it has been wealthy and privileged, but it has been heartless. It has been joyless. Her family isn't affectionate or kind, and she's been very starved of affection and love her whole life. Again, even this marriage she was going to enter in was very stiff, and she wasn't affectionate enough with her fiance and was just very guarded. And we learn this poor woman is touch starved, for goodness sake. She's never been with someone who was touching her for any other reason than, wanting sex with her or wanting this or whatever. So it's been tough. And sure, poor little rich girl, but it's how would you do? I can't even imagine living a life without being touched. That's awful. And Isaiah is just so full of life, and he just wants to lavish love and attention on her. And she feels like she shouldn't accept it. She feels like, he's forced his way into my life. But sometimes we need people to do that. And there's just something about Isaiah. Isaiah just wants to care for people. He's so kind and loving, and he has a rough history too. Him and Kai lost their parents when they were very young. It's just been the two of them, and it's just been them in baseball. And yeah, so there's just a lot of insecurities that Isaiah has too. And so watching him and Kennedy work through those together was really beautiful. And the way that the third act played out, I thought was so good. I mean, it was exactly what I thought it might be, but I also loved it still too. It was so cute. They were so cute together. So there was a lot to love about this story. I really did enjoy myself so much. And at the end of the day, I could have picked at it more. Of course I could have, but I just didn't really want to. I had a great time with it, as I said, and I don't have a reason to be like too nitpicky with it. So I ended up giving it a 5-star. It's probably tied with me for Mile High, like honestly. Of course, The Right Move is still my favorite, and then it's probably like Mile High and Play Along, and then Caught Up would be just right behind it. Like they're all very close together for me. So yeah, 5 stars and a 3.5 on the spice scale for sure. Very good. Some very good dirty talk and sexy scenes, of course. Liz Tom 40 does those very well. All right, then I had another arc, but this one was an ALC. Okay, I had an ALC of Surprisingly Us by Erin Hawkins. This was a new to me author. This was also book 4 in a series. And this one is a billionaire and a ballerina. This was narrated by Aaron Mallon and Christian Fox. And this was book 4 in the Unexpectedly in Love series. So yeah, this one is about Colette and Reese, and Colette is a ballerina, as I said, and Reese is a billionaire playboy, and he is supposed to be taking over his family's company, only he discovers that his grandpa might not be making him the head of the foundation for the company, but maybe his cousin instead. And now the thing is, this company is his parents' legacy, but it is run by the grandfather right now, because when his dad died, the grandfather like took it back over basically. And he'll decide who the next like head of it is. And he's determined that it's going to be him because it's his family's legacy, not his cousin's, which, I mean, it is his cousin's family too, but he's like, this is my parent. And so they actually knew each other when they were young. Their families had homes near each other at this one like lake where they used to vacation. So their friends are all friends. So they get a chance to really talk with each other when they go to one of their friends' weddings, right? And they happen to start chatting, and they actually are like really vibing with each other. It's going well. And then they both discover pretty quickly that they need a like fake partner. So she discovers that to get the lead ballerina role, she needs to be showing more passion in her dancing. And so it's suggested that her having some like good sex, I guess, could help her with that. She actually is a virgin, which isn't made a huge deal of in this book, besides the fact that like she's supposed to experience more passion, right? And she's been so focused on her career that she hasn't dated anyone to lose her virginity to. So it isn't even her like, you know, it isn't her being like, I have to lose it. She's just like, I haven't had time. Like, I've been dancing. That is what I'm about, right? And then Reese, he wants to reform his playboy image. And so him having a girlfriend and looking faithful and devoted will look good for his image, right? And so when he's trying to decide what to do to help with this, he thinks of her, having just seen her at this wedding. And so he comes to see her to propose this idea. And so she's really hesitant at first. And he's like, I'm telling you, this will be good for both of us. You know, we already know each other. There won't be any games being played here. It'll just be us, you know, and I'll help you with whatever you need. I'll help you practice dating. So after me, you'll be ready to go out and just slay all the men yourself, you know. And so, yeah, they start fake dating. And yeah, there's lots of cute moments. There's lots of fun dates, both fake and real. He actually adopts a cat because he lied to her and said that he's a cat dad. So he ends up adopting a cat for that reason. I thought it was really cute too. But what I will say, this book was so long, you guys. The audiobook was like 12 hours. This was a 500-page rom-com. That is 150 pages too many for a rom-com, okay? It was way too much. I put this book down multiple times. This audiobook took me 4 days to get through. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but like that's a lot for me. And audiobooks sometimes barely take me more than one sitting, even if they are a long one. I was constantly kind of skimming stuff and skipping things. It just was so long. It dragged the story down. I liked that we did get to know them really well. Like, I understand that that's a positive of having lots of pages, but I also know very skilled authors who can make me feel that connected to a story with 150 pages less than what this author had, right? So honestly, it was too long. Now, some people, that won't be a detriment. You'll be cool with it. It was very sexy. There was lots of sexy things, but it was also a lot of repetitive sexy things. There was so many for the first 60% until they actually consummate their relationship. There was so many wet dreams that they were having. Like, every other chapter, one of them was waking up masturbating about the other person. And I'm like, we didn't need to do that this many times. We could just get them together sooner, you know? So that was a big detriment to me by the end, because I was bored of this couple by the time they got their HEA, and I don't want to feel that way. So because it was an arc, I did give it 4 stars, rounded up to that, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. All right. Then we just have a real quick share. I finished my reread of Drums of Autumn. Really happy I finished this. I didn't end up finishing my reread of Voyager. I had stopped about halfway through, and we still did the live show because the other ladies finished it. And honestly, I could talk about Voyager with my eyes closed because it's one of my, I love this series. But I finished the reread of Drums of Autumn, which we'll actually be talking about, Saturday night. You're probably getting this video on Sunday, so it's available now if you want to watch back our book club. But we'll be talking tonight about Drums of Autumn, and I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait. 6 stars, of course. So good. And then I finished Beautiful Beast by Neva Altaj, which is the final book that I read this week. This is book 1 in her new spin-off series, which is a second generation. So it's Perfectly Imperfect Mafia Legacy #1. This was actually, the release day was moved up a whole week, which is great for Neva. I'm glad she did that, but it also put a huge wrench in my plans of when I get to stuff, But that's okay. She can do what she's going to do. And this couple is Raphael and Vasilisa, or Vasya. And this is Roman and Nina. It's their oldest child. So they have 3 children, and she's the oldest one. So she is actually in her early 20s. She's 23, and she is a hacker and just a crazy character. And she's actually hacked into Raphael's business, caused a lot of problems. And so in the beginning of this book, he has discovered where this hacker is and sends his men to kidnap her and bring her back to be tortured. Now, he doesn't know this is a woman. When the kidnapping happens, he knows this is a hacker, and he doesn't assume that it's a woman. Very sexist of him, I know. But she ends up getting captured and handcuffed and put in the basement. And she gets a little bit mistreated by some of the men because she fights hard. She fights real hard. And she is there when Raphael gets back. And when Raphael realizes this is a woman and that she's been mistreated, he's really pissed at his men because they're like, I don't care if I sent you to get her. Once you realized it was a woman, you should have had some manners, So he does shoot a guy in the face. Real great. Love it. And then instead of torturing her and punishing her, he comes up with a better way to use her. So he's like, I'm going to keep you here in my mansion with me, and you're going to fix the problems that you caused in my organization. And once you've fixed everything that you broke, you can go home, right? You can go home. Now, so now they're living in close proximity. She is being forced to stay with him, only working on the laptop when he's there. Of course, he doesn't leave her with the computer while he's gone. He only lets her wear his shirts in the beginning. That was really fun. But of course, he starts to fall for her while she's there. And very soon, he's actually sabotaging his own business so that she won't be done with the fix ever, which is really cute, right? We love an insecure boy like that. It's so good. And the only problem is, though, she's a Russian princess, mafia princess. Like, her father is Roman. He is Roman Petrov. He is not going to take this lying down, and he is going to want to get his little girl back. So we're definitely playing against time here. But especially once these two start to fall for each other, these two are very messy. Like, I'll have some thoughts. Give me a second here. But, so what is kind of the imperfect part of this one? We know that every man that Neva writes, doesn't have to be the man, but every book of hers usually has a disability or some, defect that makes them imperfect, right? And so in this one, we do have, it is called Beautiful Beast because he is very scarred. There was actually a situation 20 years ago where he rescued this little girl from this like bombing that happened. And so he's very scarred. So he feels very ugly. It's actually kind of a funny scene because he's been kind of hiding his face the whole time from her, and then one night he's actually like carrying her up to bed and he lets her see his face, and he's expecting her to just think that she's hideous, and really she's just like couldn't care less, you know, which I think makes sense. I mean, she is a mafia princess. She's seen some ugly things. She hasn't seen everything, you know, that her father's organization has done or this or that, but she does have like uncles and people who have scars and injuries too, right? So yeah. But anyway, these two have this kind of slow burn dance that they're doing, and once the sexy times begin, oof, things get really hot. There's some really hot scenes in here. Now, I gave this one 4 stars, and I will say it did feel a bit different than some of Neva's previous series. And I can't say why. Her books have gotten longer recently, right? Like Darkest Sins, which is my favorite, is her longest book. But it still felt very similar to other books in the series where like things are moving pretty quickly and we're moving right along. This book felt kind of stagnant in parts for me. I can't quite put on why, but it felt long. And that just is weird for a Neva Altaj book for me. Her books usually feel very snappy, very quick. Like, yes, the men fall fast and not everyone likes that, but like I do. That is what like her men do. I like seeing them fall fast, fall quick, them prove to the heroine that they're the one for them, and then like that's it, you know? And this one, there was a lot of back and forth and it was kind of drawn out. Like this book was 380 pages and it just felt so much longer than her other books I've read. So I don't know. It didn't mean I disliked it. It just didn't feel as tight and concise and as good as I wanted to. And it felt like there was too much back and forth with them. Now, for some people, they might have been wanting one of Neva's books to be more fleshed out like this. And there you go. There were a lot more complex emotions and discussions than there are in previous ones, which is fair. I totally get it. I usually expect her books for me to get through them a little faster, and this took a little bit of work to get through for me. So I didn't hate it, but it also isn't up to the standard of some of her other books I've read. I expect a little more from those. So I did end up giving this one 4 star, but this one is also a 4 on the Spice Scale. It was very good. And there is some gore and mentions of previous lovers. So this was kind of funny though. Okay, I'll throw this in there because I mean, I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on it because wow. I went to write my review last night, which I actually haven't written my review for it yet. I was too tired last night. And there was people pissed that Neva mentioned one of Raphael's previous lovers. It isn't even a current lover. It's not even a scene where like he bangs someone while he's trying to forget her or anything. It's literally a previous situation where he's talking about women seeing his scars and then running from his bed. And literally, guys, there's people who gave this like 2 stars because they're like, I expected better from Neva. Why is she mentioning another woman? It's just gross. It makes him look like a fuckboy. Like, there's people really complaining about that. And I guess, you know, I hate other women drama. And I don't love seeing heroes fuck other women. Like, I don't want to see it in the story. I'm okay with it if it happened before. Literally, guys, this paragraph that they were all highlighting is just him stating that he's been hurt by lovers before, where he keeps it as a one-night stand because he'll fuck a woman and then she'll see him and run. It doesn't go into detail of what positions they used or how long, or like, it doesn't even say the woman's name. And literally there are reviews for this where people gave it 2 stars because she mentioned that he's fucked someone before. Like, did you think this 39-year-old mafia man was a virgin? I'm confused. So anyway, that wasn't a detractor for me, but I put it in my trigger warnings because I was like, is that something you guys want to be warned of? Like, not if they're currently dating someone else, not if they're currently sleeping with someone else, because I absolutely would warn you of that. But if they mention a previous hookup from years ago, that apparently is something I need a trigger warning now. I don't know. I won't be doing that. I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there to discussion piece because go look at the reviews for this. and see what some people said. I did not know this was a thing. I've been reviewing books for a long time now. And yes, I know to do a trigger warning for if there is another woman. Like, let's say they're currently dating someone else, or they are trying to forget the heroine, so they go and have a one-night stand during the story, right? I would warn people of those because I don't like reading those either. And it's a case-by-case basis if I'll forgive them. This one is literally Raphael remembering times where he slept with women who ran away from him because of his face. It's showing layers to him. It's showing that he's been hurt. Whether he wants to admit it or not, he's been hurt by partners not liking his face before. And I just was like, anyway, people are so fucking picky about stuff, you guys. I don't know. I liked this. I did. It's Neva. It's great. I wonder if it's because it's the beginning of a series, right? And to be fair, my lowest rated Neva book before was also a Petrov book. It was Roman's book. So it is kind of funny that this is also one that I'm just not my favorite. Whereas, like, you know, Painted Scars, which is Roman and Nina's book, was also my lowest rated one by her. So maybe it's just a generational thing with the stories. Who's to say? But anywho, thank you so much for watching this weekly wrap up. I appreciate y'all so much. If you would like to support what I do here, I do have links to my Patreon and channel memberships. Every little bit helps so much. You have no idea. As well as I do have that sale going on right now that's if you buy 3 or more items, it's 30% off your whole order on my Etsy. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.